Hey, paddle friends, welcome back to Padel Smash TV News, your weekly spot for everything happening in the world of paddle.
We got a big one today. Global growth, big investments, new market, and some proper drama again.
And honestly, this week feels different because when you look at all these stories together, you really start to see where paddle is heading.
So don't skip this one.
Let's get into it. All right, let's start with this one because Whoop just signed a 3-year deal with Premier Padel. And this is not just another sponsorship. This is data entering the sport in a serious way. Players now going to be tracked, recovery, sleep, strain, basically everything happening inside their body. And that changes how you prepare because no longer just how do I feel today, it's what does the data actually say. Coaches can adjust sessions, players can manage fatigue between matches, and over a full season that can really affect consistency, especially in long tournaments where recovery becomes key. We've seen this in other sports. Once data becomes part of the process, the level rises because everything becomes more precise and optimized. So yeah, maybe this doesn't look like the biggest move right now, but long term, this could be one of those shifts that take paddle into a more high-performance professional era.
Now this might look like a small scheduling change, but it actually has a big impact because the Asunción P2 has been moved to May 4th to the 10th and now sits right before Buenos Aires P1, creating a full back-to-back South American swing. And the key here is travel, because players are constantly flying, changing time zones, dealing with jet lag, and trying to recover in between tournaments. And that takes a serious toll over their season and health. Now they stay in the same region, they get into rhythm, they adapt to the conditions, and that usually leads to better matches, higher level, and more consistency across the week. So for fans, it means better paddle, and for the players, this is actually a big upgrade in terms of performance and preparation.
This next one's all about exposure because paddle is being integrated into the Hong Kong Sevens, one of the biggest rugby events in the world with over 120,000 spectators. And what makes this interesting is not just the event itself, it's the audience, because most of those people have probably never seen paddle live before. So now you're putting the sport right in front of them in a high energy environment where they're already there to be entertained. And that creates a natural introduction to the game. And that's how sports grows globally. New audiences, new markets, same product, just exposed in the right environment.
Barcelona is about to host one of the biggest paddle business events so far this year, the World Padel Summit, with more than 150 brands, over 40 speakers, and thousands of professionals. And this is where all the real business happens. Deals, partnerships, investments, ideas turning into actual projects. Because paddle is not just about growing on the court anymore, it's organizing itself off court as a proper industry. And that's a big shift. Because once the sport starts structuring itself like this, growth becomes more strategic, more scalable, and a lot faster.
Next up is Egypt with new Giza P2. And this actually is a really important moment for the sport globally because it shows paddle's expanding into new regions, not just Europe or Latin America anymore. And once a new region enters the map, things usually accelerate very quickly. You get visibility, you get local interest, and then you get investment following that. So this is more than just another tournament. It's a part of a bigger expansion strategy.
So the US just reached 1,000 paddle courts. And when you really think about it, it's kind of crazy. Because not long ago, paddle was basically non-existent here. We're talking about a market that went from almost zero awareness to building real infrastructure in just a few years. And that kind of growth doesn't happen by accident. Now projections are pointing to something even bigger, potentially 20,000 paddle courts by 2030. And if even a portion of that actually happens, you're looking at one of the biggest paddle markets in the world. Because once infrastructure is in place, everything else follows. More players, more coaches, more clubs, more competition, and even more visibility. So this one is one of the milestones that doesn't just mark growth. It shows where things are heading next.
And you can already see the growth happening in real time if you look at Miami, because the city is quickly becoming one of the main hubs for paddle in the USA. And what's interesting is not just the number of courts, it's how people are engaging with the sport. Padel there is becoming part of a lifestyle, not just something you go and play, but something you build social plans around. People go to the club, they play, they stay, they hang out, they meet people, and that creates a completely different dynamic compared to traditional sports. Because once a sport becomes social, it spreads faster, people invite friends, communities grow, and suddenly it's not just about playing, it's about being part of something. So Miami is not just growing, it's setting the blueprint for how Padel can expand in the major cities.
Now we're starting to see something else happening in the US, which is a structure. Because the National Padel League is launching across 6 different cities, including Miami, Boston, San Diego, and a few more. And this is important because there is a big difference between people playing casually and having an actual competitive system in place. Leagues bring organization, they bring consistency, they create teams, schedules, rivalries, and what turns out a growing sport into a stable one. Players start identifying with teams, they start caring about results, and that creates engagements over time. So this might not be the flashiest headline, but in terms of long-term growth, this is one of the most important steps for the US scene.
In Scotland, we're seeing another key development because tennis organizations are now officially integrating Padel in their structure. And that's a really important step for the sports for the future. Because when established federations start supporting Padel, you get something that goes beyond just building courts. You get coaching systems, development pathways, and a more organized way of growing the sport. And that matters because without structure, growth can be fast but unstable. With structure, it becomes sustainable. So this is one of those behind-the-scene moves that might not get a lot of attention, but it actually plays a big role in how the sport evolves long-term.
In the UK, more paddle courts are being approved. And while that might not sound like the biggest headline, this actually how real growth happens. Because every new court increases access. And access is what brings new players into the sport. And you can have all the hype in the world, but if people don't have a place to play, nothing really moves. So step by step, these approvals are building the foundation, more facilities, more players, and more community. And over time, that's what creates a long-lasting paddle scene.
Paddle is now entering a completely different space as well, because luxury resorts in Bahamas are starting to add courts as part of their experience, and that actually says a lot about where the sport is heading. Because now it's not just seen as a sport, it's become part of a lifestyle, something people experience while traveling, relaxing, and enjoying premium environments. And that attracts different types of audience. People who might discover paddle in that setting and then continue to play elsewhere. So this is not just expansion in geography, it's expansion in positioning, and that's how sport starts reaching new levels.
And when you talk about expansions, you can't ignore the impact of big names. Because Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo, is now going all in paddle in Brazil. And that kind of move brings a lot of more than just money. Because when someone with that level of influence gets involved, it brings visibility, credibility, and attention from audiences that might not have been looking at paddle before. And that creates momentum. Because more people becomes aware, more investors get interested, and the whole ecosystem starts growing faster. So this is one of those moves that helps accelerate the sport in a complete different way.
Now let's switch it up with something lighter, because one of the coolest moments this week came from a proposal on the court, where a player hit a ring inside a paddle ball, missed his serve on purpose, and then walked up and proposed at the net. And honestly, moments like this show a different side of the sport, because paddle is not just competition, it's community, it's relationships, it's shared experiences, and that's part of what makes it special. Because people don't just play paddle, they build moments around it.
Another moment that really stood out came from Agustín Tapia. And honestly, it wasn't about winning. It was actually after losing the Miami final, which makes even more interesting because instead of him just walking off the court frustrated and focused on the results, he stopped, took a second, and gave his much-used racket to a ball boy. And at first, it might look like a small gesture, but something simple when you think about it. Those are the moments that really define players because it shows awareness, it shows respect for the people around the game, and it shows that even in a tough moment, you can still think beyond yourself. And for that kid, that probably is something that he will remember forever. So yeah, these are the moments that go beyond results, beyond rankings, and they build connections, they build identity, and they're a big part in what makes players like Tapia stand out.
Okay, now let's get into a bit of a debate. Because Leo Oxberger recently said that he feels like the third best left side player in the world. And that immediately got attention. But then Stupa responded in a very direct way, basically saying the rankings are what decide that, not opinions. And this is where it gets interesting. Because on one side, confidence is essential. Every top player needs to believe they belong at the highest level. Otherwise, you don't compete. But on the other side, rankings exist for a reason. They reflect results, consistency, performance over time. So it creates that tension between perception and reality. How you see yourself versus what you've actually achieved so far. And honestly, debates like this are good for the sport because they create conversation, they get fans involved, and they add to competition edge beyond the matches. So yeah, now the real question is, can he back it up on the court?
And speaking of tensions, the drama continues because Lisandro Borges is back at it again with just another video. And it's clear that this situation is not cooling down anytime soon. And what's interesting here is not just about what is being said, but what is happening around it. Because it's all playing out publicly on social media, where everyone can see it, react to it, and form their own opinions. So it turns out something bigger than just a disagreement. It becomes part of the narrative around the sport. And whether people like it or not, moments like this bring attention, they come with discussions, and they pull new eyes into paddle because people are naturally drawn to stories like this. So yeah, it's not always positive, but it's definitely part of how modern sports grow. Not just through performance, but through storylines as well.
Now on the competitive side, things are heating up again in Spain, with tournaments bringing together strong pairings. What really stands out right now is the overall level across the board, because it feels like the gap between players is getting smaller. There are fewer, easier matches, and even early rounds are becoming competitive. And that's a big sign of the sport that is maturing, because when depth increases, it means more players are reaching a high level, more competition, more unpredictability. You can't just rely on talent anymore. You need consistency, you need strategy, and you need mental strength. And for fans, that's exactly what you want to see. More intense matches, more surprises, more stories developing throughout the tournament. So yeah, the level's rising, and that's pushing everyone forward. And this one shows how fast Padel is growing at a club level. Padel Boston just announced a major expansion. They're adding 3 new courts connecting both spaces and building a new lounge and private event area to enhance the full club experience. Construction starts soon, with openings planning later this year. And honestly, this is exactly how Padel becomes more than just a sport, turning clubs into a social hub. All right, Jules, what do you think about the whole Whoop thing and all the data it's going to accumulate?
I mean, I think it's ideal for any sports. Data creates better performance, better eyes of what players need. But the funny part with this is that it's being prohibited in tennis, but it's widely approved in paddle, and it became one of the main sponsors. But I think the data, I've seen Whoop, what the data that gives you, and I think it's essential for anyone, from how many steps, how many calories, when you need to go to bed, I mean, how many hours of sleep, what is your performance in the court. I think that data is essential for anyone, not only professionals, but for anyone to become healthier, and especially when you play sports.
I was about to say that. You know, it also can focus on amateurs and just the players, just so that they can have better nutrition, more energy, and just get 100% out of them playing paddle.
Yeah.
So I think it's a smart move by Whoop, and it's great for Premier. They got this big sponsor. So data's always been a key factor when optimizing performance in all sports. And so now it's in paddle.
It will be interesting for you guys to see what are your thoughts. Please, put a message below, or what do you think about these new data technology companies coming into the ecosystem? Because I think from everyone's point of view, I think it's a positive thing. But the data doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it. and how to apply it to become better at it. So I think it will be very, very interesting. And if Whoop can add some paddle features to it, it will be very interesting.
That would be great.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
Because now if you can mix in between, the AI cameras like PlaySight and all that, combined with Whoop, the running distance and all those things, the stroke, production, how many forehands, how many backhands, how many bandejas have you hit, it creates a whole new dynamics of very interesting data to grasp.
More specific data.
More specific data. So that's the week. And honestly, it just keeps getting bigger and better.
Every week there's something new, and it feels like we're just getting started.
Let us know which story caught your attention.
And don't forget to like, subscribe.
And every month we're doing giveaways, so stay tuned for more.
From Miami to the world, this is Padel Smash TV. I'll see you next time.